Grace lived in the bustling city of Lagos with her husband, Kenneth. They had a comfortable life with their 2 children, Chuka and Ada, who were away at boarding school. Kenneth was a successful businessman, and Grace was a dedicated teacher at a local secondary school. Their life was peaceful, and they were content with their achievements and the bright future they envisioned for their children. One fine afternoon, Grace returned home from work, humming a tune as she unlocked the front door. The house was unusually quiet, and she called out for Kenneth, expecting him to be in his study. There was no response. As she walked into the living room, she froze in horror. Kenneth lay on the floor, his eyes closed, with foam seeping from his mouth, a clear sign of poisoning. "Kenneth," she screamed, rushing to his side. She shook him frantically, but he did not respond. "Help! Somebody help me," she cried, her voice breaking with desperation. Neighbors quickly gathered, and one of them called for an ambulance. They rushed Kenneth to the hospital, but it was too late. The doctors confirmed what Grace had feared the most: Kenneth was dead. Grace's world crumbled around her. Her husband's sudden death left her in shock and disbelief. The police arrived to investigate, but there were no immediate leads. As she sat in the hospital's waiting room, numb and in a daze, Grace knew her life was about to take a dramatic turn. Within days, Grace received a summons from Kenneth's family to return to the village with his body for what they termed an investigation. Kenneth's family was deeply traditional, and they believed his death warranted a thorough examination of circumstances and responsibilities. Grace, still reeling from the shock, took a leave from her school for 2 weeks and prepared to travel to the village. She dreaded the trip, knowing it would be a challenging ordeal. The village of Nkwia was a stark contrast to the bustling city life Grace was accustomed to. The thatched roofs, red clay roads, and lush green fields painted a picturesque but foreign landscape. Grace traveled with Kenneth's body, accompanied by her brother, Emeka, who insisted on supporting her through this difficult time. As they approached the village, Grace's anxiety grew. She remembered her husband's stories about his family's strict adherence to traditions and customs. Kenneth's parents had passed away, but his extended family held significant influence in the village. She was particularly apprehensive about facing Elder Okeke, a powerful and respected figure who had always shown animosity towards Kenneth. When they arrived, a group of villagers and family members greeted them with solemn expressions. They led the procession to Kenneth's family compound, where preparations for his burial were already underway. Grace's heart ached as she saw Kenneth's relatives gathered, whispering and casting accusatory glances in her direction. The next day, the elders convened a meeting to address the circumstances surrounding Kenneth's death. Grace was introduced to the Women's Panel, a group tasked with investigating her role in the tragedy. The panel consisted of both educated women from the city and illiterate women from the village. Grace felt a sliver of hope, thinking the educated woman might understand her plight and offer some support. The women's panel began their investigation with a series of questions directed at Grace. They gathered in the village square, seated in a semicircle, with Grace standing in the center. The villagers watched intently, curious about the proceedings. One of the educated women, Mrs. Ease, spoke first. "Grace, we understand you were present when Kenneth passed away. Can you tell us what happened that day?" Grace recounted the events with trembling hands and a heavy heart. She described finding Kenneth on the floor, calling for help, and the futile rush to the hospital. Her voice wavered as she spoke, and tears streamed down her face. An illiterate woman, Mama Ngozi, interrupted her. "But how can we be sure you did not poison him yourself?" It is common knowledge that city women often have their own ways of dealing with troublesome husbands. Grace was taken aback by the harsh accusation. "I loved my husband. I would never do such a thing," she replied, her voice shaking. The women exchanged glances, and another panel member, Mrs. Nwankwo, questioned her further. Did Kenneth have any enemies? Anyone who might have wanted to harm him? Grace thought about Elder Okeke but hesitated to mention him. Kenneth was a good man. He had no known enemies, she said, deciding to keep her suspicions to herself for now. As the questioning continued, it became evident that most of the women on the panel had already formed a bias against Grace. They seemed determined to find her guilty, regardless of her answers. The educated woman, whom she had hoped would be more understanding, remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Days turned into a week, and the investigation dragged on. Grace was subjected to various traditional rites meant to prove her innocence. One such ritual involved drinking the water used to wash Kenneth's body, a practice believed to reveal the truth. Grace was horrified by the prospect but felt she had no choice. Her mother, who had arrived in the village to support her, urged her to comply. "You must do it, Grace. It is the only way to clear your name," her mother said, her voice tinged with resignation. On the day of the ritual, the village elders and the women's panel gathered around a large wooden bowl filled with the ritual water. Grace stood before them, her hands trembling as she lifted the bowl to her lips. Just as she was about to drink, she noticed Elder Okeke standing nearby, holding a small vial. She paused, her heart pounding. "What is that in your hand, Elder Okeke?" she asked, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Elder Okeke's eyes widened with surprise, and he quickly tried to hide the vial. But Grace's sharp eyes had already seen it. "I saw you drop something into the bowl," she accused. The elders and villagers erupted in confusion, murmuring amongst themselves. One of the elders, Chief Nemdi, stepped forward. "Elder Okeke, is this true? Did you tamper with the ritual?" Elder Okeke stammered, unable to come up with a convincing denial. Chief Nemdi then made a bold decision. To settle this matter, Elder Okeke must drink the water himself. Panic crossed Elder Okeke's face, and he refused. The villagers, sensing foul play, grabbed him and forced him to confess. "Yes, I poisoned Kenneth," he admitted, his voice shaking. "I bribed the women's panel to be hard on Grace and make her suffer. Kenneth refused to give me a share of his property, and I wanted him gone." The village erupted in outrage. Elder Okeke was immediately ostracized, and the women's panel was dismantled. Grace was vindicated, but the trauma of the ordeal lingered. Her faith in the village's justice system was shattered, and she felt a deep sense of betrayal. Kenneth's body was finally laid to rest with dignity, and Grace returned to the city with a heavy heart. The experience had left her scarred, but she was determined to rebuild her life and honor Kenneth's memory. In the following months, Grace took time off work to heal and spend time with her children. She sought therapy to help her process the trauma and gradually found a sense of peace. Her colleagues at the school and friends in the city provided support and encouragement, helping her regain her strength. 2 years later, Grace had come a long way. She resumed her teaching job and became an advocate for women's rights, sharing her story to raise awareness about the injustices faced by women in traditional societies. Grace's mother, who had been a silent pillar of strength during the ordeal, moved in with her to help take care of the children. They formed a close bond, and Grace found comfort in her mother's presence. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Grace reflected on the journey she had been through. "Mama, I never thought I would survive this. But here we are, stronger than ever." Her mother smiled, squeezing her hand. "You are a strong woman, Grace. Kenneth would be proud of you." Grace nodded, feeling a sense of closure. She knew that Kenneth's spirit would always be with her, guiding her and giving her strength. As the years passed, Grace continued to thrive, both as a mother and as an advocate. She became a beacon of hope for other women who faced similar challenges, proving that resilience and determination could overcome even the darkest of times. Grace's story became a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the importance of standing up for justice and truth. Her journey from grief to empowerment inspired many, and her legacy lived on through the lives she touched and the changes she helped bring about in her community. And so, in the bustling city of Lagos, Grace's name became synonymous with courage and resilience, a testament to the power of love, truth, and the unwavering strength of a determined woman.